Welcome back, Carolina, to Wild Dogs and Hogs. It's right here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell, along with the coach, Jimmy Collins. And, Coach, it was another exciting week in college football here in the Old North State. There were a few barn burners up and down Tobacco Road. There were some interesting moments, and there was in one town in this state, there were a lot of stomach issues going into the fourth quarter and into overtime. And I know we will talk about that one. We sure will. We'll also talk about what to do when you're a coach with your team during a 1 hour and 45-minute weather delay. That's what Dave Doran and North Carolina State's coaching staff had to work with, along with the Wolfpack on the field. And when the Wolfpack came back out there, they gave up one 80-yard touchdown for the Fighting Irish, and they never looked back. But, Jimmy, that has to throw you for a loop. A big sellout crowd at Carter Finley Stadium, and then the rains come, and almost 2 hours later, you're back at it again. You know, Mike, I can actually tell you what that's like, because when I was coaching at Marshall University, we were playing Tennessee in Knoxville and had a storm, and we had a 2-hour delay on the game. So it is, I'll be honest with you, the players are so resilient. They handle it much better than the coaches do. You know, we get that tightness, if you know what I mean. And so the players relax, they lie around, they sleep, they're fine. But the rest of us tend to think way too much and create way too many issues. So, but it is taxing on you. I can tell you that for sure. It's just hard to kill that much time. I know, and you and I both are racing enthusiasts, and you probably watch Ford versus Ferrari. They talk about the 24-hour of Le Mans and having the thrill, the exhilaration of driving one of those ships and in that storied race, and then having to get out of the car and they say, "Oh yeah, go sleep for a minute." I've never been one to do that. Have you been able to knock out like that? No way. Once I get into game mode and get the adrenaline rolling, it's hard to turn it off. Even after a game, I always struggled to sleep after a game because I had plays running through my mind, and you remember this. And win, lose, or draw, it's tough to come down after a game. So yeah, that delay is tough on everybody now, no doubt. So North Carolina gets the win. NC State comes up short. What about the other Big Four games? Brought to you by Excel Moving and Storage, the official moving and storage company of the North Carolina Sports Network. Let's look at the scoreboard right now. East Carolina, they lose the home opener, Coach, against Marshall, 31-13. I don't think you can push the panic button just yet on Mike Houston and the Pirates. Well, no, not 2 games in, but that was a critical game. You in this day and age of college football, you got to win at home. It's hard to win on the road. So you have to win at home. Losing one at home creates that only not puts them 2 behind the 8 ball at this point in time. Because it's tough out there on the road now. Let me just tell you that, and it's been that way for years, and it's gotten harder and harder to win on the road. And what about that game coming up this weekend? The Old North State tailgate will head to the high country of North Carolina, one of the best places on the planet. Kid Brewer Stadium, The Rock, 3,333 feet up in the air. Appalachian State off that double overtime loss this past weekend in Chapel Hill, now at home at The Rock against East Carolina, and Mike Houston and the Pirates. They're sailing up into the western part of the state at 0-2, Coach. So not time to press the panic button, but both of these teams right now really seem to be at a place to where you're going to have a heck of a game up in Watauga County. I think there's no doubt about it, and East Carolina will come in ready to play. But the old Kid Brewer is a hard place to play now. I was there a year ago with the Tar Heels, and what a shootout! I've never been in anything like that. I hate to even bring it up. Tar Heel fans want to forget about that, especially with what they just went through this weekend. But I think East Carolina will play well there. But I really believe
that this Appalachian State team is a very, very good football team, and they'll be hard to beat on the mountain this weekend.
Kudos to Sean Clark and the App coaching staff getting their backup quarterback up and into the game, takes them on the brink of the big football in a forest upset on Saturday night. But North Carolina gets that win in double overtime over the Mountaineers, 40-34. Coach Amarian Hampton, 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. Is that Natron Means? Is that Kelvin Bryant? Is that James Boom Boom Betterson? I mean, this is Amarian Hampton. He has the name to go along with the game. That's a quarter of 1,000 almost.
Well, we'll go back to our first episode, and as we talked about in the preseason, I like this guy. I think this guy's played well. He played well early in the season last year, and then as some freshmen do, he disappeared in the latter part of the season. But he has tremendous ability, has good vision, has good cutting ability, and as we saw on a long run, he has taken to the distance speed also. So there's no doubt. I think he's legit without a doubt. I really like him.
To me, that's classic Tar Heel football. When you get a big back who's just going to the left, going to the right. I tell you, when you talk about those kind of numbers in a Keenan opener, you have to go back to Tarborough's own Kelvin Bryant when he went for 6 touchdowns in that 56-0 season opening at home win by North Carolina over Ed Emory and East Carolina back in the day. I mean, that's a lot of yards for a young man this early in the season.
Well, 26 carries for 230 plus, 9 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns, 68 long. I mean, quite a performance now. And you have to give a great deal of credit to Chip Lindsey and the offense. They were in some unbalanced sets and some things they had not shown earlier, and they lined up and they were App was shorthanded on the backside, and Amarian made some really, really good cuts on the 68-yard run. I'm not even sure he was touched on that run. So you got to give the O-line a lot of credit that they blocked a lot of people on those plays. So good to see the Tar Heels running the football, and I'm glad I'm sure Coach Brown will be very happy about that.
Absolutely, because if you can win it on the ground, you're going to increase your opportunity for more W's than L's. But don't discount the performance of Drake May. He has the really cool lunging Jordan-esque type of prance into the end zone late in the game. But over his first 2 games, Jimmy, he's 45 of 62, 477 yards. He has 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, along with 57. He's been sacked twice. But the kid's quarterback rating is 141.4. So that's probably what an NFL scout looks at right now, rather than the early season Heisman hype.
Well, I don't think the performances that he's had in the first 2 games will hurt him absolutely at all when it comes to NFL. Unfortunately, I don't know that it's going to help him be a Heisman candidate at this point in time. But the Tar Heels are doing exactly what they need to do. As you see, he was 21 out of 30 for 208 and 6.9 yards per attempt. No TDs, no interceptions. But once again, he did get involved in what? He got involved in the running game again. I think he had 57 yards, I believe, rushing. So they're doing what they need to do to protect him, to keep him standing up. They're not throwing the ball vertically as much as they have in the past with Phil Longo. Chip Lindsey's being a little bit more conservative in it. J.J. Jones did have 5 catches for 91 yards with a 57 long, and that's 18.2 per catch. So there is the big playability there. But overall, it's not much of a vertical game right now for the Tar Heels.
The big part of that vertical game that is not on the field right now is Tez Walker, and he is not going to play this year. It doesn't look like there's really any hope outside of a personal legal challenge, and then even then, it is a long shot at best. But, you know, Tez is not going to be out there, Jimmy, and that was a big part of that vertical opportunities for Chip Lindsey in that Tar Heel offense. So how incumbent is it for somebody to step up and take some of the relief off of the running backs and the tight ends in this offense? And who do you think will emerge?
Well, obviously it's critical. It was good to see Nate McCollum show up in the game late in the game on Saturday. Me personally, I think Nate McCollum is a big play potential, has big play potential, and I think he will be a huge part of the game plan as they move forward. I'll be shocked if he's not, because if you go back a year ago and watch him again at Georgia Tech, now he had all the ability that you wanted when you go out and recruit him and you take him in the transfer portal. So I thought it was a big get when they got him, and I think he will still be a factor in the game. Now, don't be deceived now. J.J. Jones and Kobe Pasher can both run. They don't lack speed now. I think the thing that's happening with the Tar Heels, I think right now they're developing and creating a unity with their O-line. So they're not holding the ball as much. They're not throwing it down. They're reading one side of the field rather than the entire field. So they're giving Drake a chance to be successful without running for his life and scrambling and getting hit. He got sacked 38 times last year, if you remember. I may be off a number or so, but that's a lot of sacks. That's a lot of times to be hit. So they're trying to keep him on his feet right now.
What percentage of the yards last year for Drake May were, hey, I'm trying to actually run the ball here because it's the great strategic thing, as opposed to, hey, I got to run like the Dickens out here because I'm getting ready to get pummeled?
A high percentage of those were ad-lib runs, were passes, and that he scrambled out on. And the other thing that was huge was because his percentage of throwing the ball down the field was so good a year ago that the quarterback draw became a really, really key play for the Tar Heels during the 2022 season.
It was a thing of beauty to watch at times last year. And right now, the Tar Heels looking pretty good at 2-0. Back down to Raleigh we go. It was the first game of the day among the Triangle teams. Duke would later beat Vanderbilt in the Triangle nightcap. But at high noon, it was NC State and the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Early on, this one had some real classic back and forth, but then came the 1 hour and 45-minute weather delay. And when they came back from that, it was the Irish going 80 yards to the house, and they really never looked back. Jimmy, let's look at the line here from Brennan Armstrong.
Well, I think when you look at his stats, Brennan Armstrong was 22 out of 47 for 260, 2 touchdowns, but 3 critical interceptions. Only 5.5 yards per completion. What does that tell me as a coach? That tells me, and I watched the game, and I watched him scramble around and make plays with his feet, or attempt to make plays with his feet. The Wolfpack has some protection issues right now, and he just needs a little bit more time in the pocket. The other thing is you take a look at is the Wolfpack rushed it 30 times for 84 yards. That's 2.8 yards per carry, 1 TD with a long of 13 yards. That's not enough production in the run game to keep the pressure off of your quarterback. When you can't run it and those D linemen and linebackers can put their ears back and go rush that passer, it's tough, man. It's tough to protect and do those things.
I still feel very optimistic, though, about this NC State team. They feel like a group that's going to progressively get better as they go throughout the season. And I tell you, somebody else who is doing a great job early on here in 2023, and that's the team that we saw reign victorious in the Aggie Eagle Classic on Saturday night. North Carolina Central is for real, 30-16. And right now, North Carolina Central, you know where they're playing this weekend, don't you, Jimmy?
You know what? I to be honest with you, I don't. So
they are playing against UCLA in the Rose Bowl.
I did know that.
Pac-12 network.
I did know that. Yes.
Trey Oliver has got this group really rolling right now, and it seems like the Bruins, they like playing people from the South. They played Coastal Carolina in week 1 and got that one by 2 touchdowns, 27-13. But the North Carolina Central playing in the Rose Bowl.
North Carolina Central has done a great job. They were the HBCU national champions a year ago. and developed the program, done a tremendous job. And to beat my hometown Aggies like that, it kind of goes to my heart a little bit now. So, but tremendous job by Coach Oliver.
He's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell, and you're tuned in to Wild Dogs and Hogs right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
What does it mean when people say America is a land of opportunity?
It means the power to discover,
to redefine yourself,
to improve yourself,
to challenge yourself,
to realize there's more in you
than you ever knew
that you could do.
It means giving people an open field to explore what they do best.
With the best tools,
the best training,
the best technology in the world.
We bring out the best in the people who serve.
So you can be all you can be.
Wild Dogs and Hogs rolls on now with our featured segment of the week, and we're bringing in one of the all-time great Appalachian State Mountaineers. Heck, we're going to Boone, North Carolina this weekend, 3,333 feet above sea level for the East Carolina Appalachian State game. That's with the Old North State tailgate, and you can download our official game day podcast starting out first thing Saturday morning. So don't forget to look at that on our official YouTube page at the NC Sports Net. You can find it right there. And, of course, at our website, ncsportsnetwork.com. Dino Hackett joining, of course, the coach, Jim Collins, and myself, Mike Waddell. And, Dino, you're coming to us from, it looks like, the place where work gets done. It looks like you have a heck of a weight room going on.
Yeah, guys, this is where I decided that during my off season, I want to spend as much time as I could at home. So this was something that I built in my home, 1986, 87, with my tackle bonus that I earned from the year before. So I just, it now gives me no excuses to not get out here when it's 50 steps from your back door.
So, Dino, tell us about your journey in football. Of course, right there in the Gate City, you grew up around Greensboro. And when did you know that you had a special aptitude when it came to playing football and bringing the pain train?
Well, when they go around this classroom when you're in the third, fourth grade, and they ask every kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Doctor, lawyer, fireman, whatever it is. Although I weighed 75 pounds, I said I'm going to be a professional football player. And fortunately, I was able to have a very productive high school career at Southern Guilford. And this guy named Jimmy Collins saw something in a skinny kid from Southern Guilford and offered me an opportunity to come play football at Appalachian State.
Jimmy, what did you see in old Dino that made you think that he'd be a standout Mountaineer?
I saw a tall, skinny young man that would run and could run, chase you down, and tried to hit you really, really hard. Also, he was a pretty darn good basketball player, weren't you, my friend? I think multiple sports equate to good athletic ability. So there were a lot of factors that convinced me that this guy would end up being a player. He actually played at strong safety for me his freshman year.
Yeah, I remember that freshman year. I came there and y'all left me at home for the Wake Forest game, and then we came back and we played the home game. I didn't play. And I was thinking I was on the scout team into the field, and we had a wide receiver back then, preseason All-American named Alonzo Upshur. Alonzo came across the middle, and I took his head off, and the head coach there at the time took offense to that. And 2 plays later, I think I hit our starting running back, and he told me to get my butt down to the other end and don't come back. I was greeted at the other end by a smiling Coach Collins, and he slapped me on the butt and said, "Good job." And I never went back down to the other end. So they started me on all the special teams that next week, and I think the senior who was starting in front of me ended up getting hurt in the middle of that game, and I finished out the game and finished out the season at strong safety.
And then we were finished. Then young Jim Collins was finished after that season. They decided they had enough of us on the mountain at that point in time.
Well, you certainly went on to do bigger and better things, Coach. And fortunately, I did too.
And we were both very fortunate in our careers, no doubt.
We're talking with Dino Hackett, former Appalachian State, Mountaineer, and Kansas City Chief. Also, Coach Jim Collins, myself, Mike Waddell. This is Wild Dogs and Hogs. And Dino, the name of this show is Wild Dogs and Hogs, as I just said. And that's a tribute back to the Hogs, the big guys up front that I tend to really think the game revolves around. And then it's Jimmy's Wild Dogs. You know, those linebackers, those headhunters, those guys that really have an aptitude to bring a lot of physicality to the sport. And my question for you is, when you're on the field and you're seeing a guy on the other side that's trying to get past you, what do you conjure up in yourself? How do you mask that emotion to where you're able to just become the force that you were on the football field?
First of all, love the name Hogs and Dogs, and love all the dogs that I played with, and had a severe dislike for all the hogs that I played. But when you play that game, especially on the professional level, at every level, you know, you prepare yourself before you go out to it's going to be a fight. You know, it's a very physical game. The way that I played the game, the way that I think the game should be played. You know, and you go out there against the 300-pound offensive lineman who, you know, his job is to make sure you don't get to the guy that you're trying to get. It's a war, and you better be prepared. So I always had to psych myself up, especially during a long NFL season. You know, you better get right before you step across those lines. And I never really had a problem getting motivated, getting fired up to play a game. And if I did, after the first 2 snaps, I figured out, hey, I didn't come out here with the right mindset, but I'm getting ready to get the right mindset because that guy in front of me is trying to take my head off.
You played for 2 great organizations that have an outstanding tradition in the sport of football. Of course, Appalachian State as a collegian, then on the Chiefs Kingdom with the Kansas City Chiefs. What are your best memories, first up, about playing on the mountain where we'll be this weekend for the East Carolina Appalachian State game? At the time, East Carolina was not in the bowl subdivision as they are right now. It was 1AA football, but Appalachian State throughout the tenure in the 1AA ranks was really known as being one of the, if not the top football program there was.
Well, you know, my memory on the mountain was, you know, we you know, took a program that, you know, had not won a Southern Conference championship. And, you know, my senior year, you know, I saw the players getting better each year. But by my senior year, I think we were picked to finish last in the Southern Conference. And we finished second in the Southern Conference. We had Furman. We should have beaten Furman, who went on to go deep into the playoffs. But back in those days, I think they only took 16 teams. And I think we were ranked 15th in the nation. They didn't take us. But, you know, my senior year, I kind of knew, you know, again, as that dream was for me to play professional football, I knew that, you know, nobody's looking at us. Nobody's coming up on this mountain unless we win some football games. So even during the off season, you know, after my junior year, I started grabbing some guys and say, look, you know, come with me. This is how we're going to work. This is what we're going to do in practice. This is what we're going to do to prepare. And, you know, we started winning football games and it became a habit. And, you know, I had an exceptional senior year. I had 200 tackles. Played as hard as I possibly could on every game, and you know, obviously that got the attention of NFL scouts. And I went to the combine and ran a 4.48, I think 4.4 something, and did very well on the running portion, the speed portion that they were trying to test me on. And of course, after that, there were 10 teams that came to the mountain and wanted to personally work me out, and I didn't care. You want to work me out, show up that day, work me out. I think I worked out for about 10 teams after that combine performance. And Chiefs were the, always at the top there, trying to, telling me that they were going to draft me early. Actually had me on the phone. They had the number 7 pick in the nation that year. Had me on the phone then. I wasn't smart enough to say I just got off the phone with the Tampa Bay Bucks or the Jets or somebody. So they said, we'll see. And they called me back in the second round, the 35th pick in the nation. And I went to a place that needed an inside linebacker. Started me day one at training camp. The head the defense coordinator comes in and says, here's our depth chart. And, I'm the starting guy from day one, which gave me a ton of confidence, led the team in tackles that year, pretty much every year that I played after that.
Who was the coordinator your first year, Dino?
That was Walt Corey.
Okay.
Walt Corey, who ended up with the Buffalo Bills and went to the Super Bowl with them 3 times. Walt himself and some scouts, they came up the mountain a couple of times, and then they sent some other folks up there as well. So I knew the Chiefs were very interested, but I also had, several other teams. The Jets flew me in, and multiple other teams came up there. And in those days, it wasn't a Appalachian Pro Day. It was, there's a scout that's in Charlotte, and he said he'll drive up here. Will you run for him today? Yeah, I'll run for him. An hour and a half later, after they're, run me all over the field. And, hell yeah, let's do it tomorrow too. Who's next?
Well, the interesting thing about college football, this day and time, you never would have finished your career on the mountain. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
with the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness the way it is right now, young Jim Collins would have found Dino Hackett again. I can tell you that.
Well, young Jim Collins found me anyway. So, Coach and I have had this discussion before, if anybody, my son was kind of undersized like I was when he come out of college, come out of high school, and, he had, a few small schools looking at him. And I think I told Coach one time, who would have known? And Coach said, I knew. And yeah, hell yeah, he knew. He knew. He saw the dog in me. And
I did see the dog.
That's so important to have that as a player. It's so important that coaches can see that, especially for a young kid coming out of high school. These kids that are full grown when they're 12, they usually don't do. Coach can speak to this more than I can, but I like a kid who is growing and is going to get bigger and stronger, faster throughout his college career. I think that becomes a better player than the kid that's already been offered a scholarship when he was 13.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's hard sometimes to project where players are, and you have to be careful that a player has not reached his full potential as a senior in high school, or in this day and time, even as a junior in high school, and as early as a sophomore. So you're right. I think it's very critical, and I think where we are right now in college sports, Dino, is that with the early commitments, you're seeing guys develop later, and that's why you see teams that are better now than they were years ago, even though the top teams in the country are still the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Southern Cals, et cetera, et cetera. But you got a few teams that are getting some very good recruits because they're waiting later on guys to develop. And so I agree with you. There's a lot of development that happens between the junior year and the senior year in high school, no doubt.
Well, it did for me. I came in, as you said, you brought me in as a strong safety. I gained. I was 190, 195 pounds. Got in the weight room during that freshman year, gained up maybe 8 pounds, played strong safety bandit my sophomore year with Coach Brown. Coach Mack had come up there, and after that season, he's the one that said, "Hey, you need to move. We're moving you to inside linebacker." And during the spring, after my sophomore year, and he says, I said, "Coach, I think I can gain some weight." He said, "You don't need to gain any more weight." He said, "You're good right now. You're big as the guy we have starting there now, and you're a much more aggressive player, so you'll be fine." And he was right, and I gained that 5 or 8 pounds of muscle each year, and go to the NFL at a 225, 230 pound middle linebacker, which is small for today's game, and you don't see very many of those guys running around at that weight, but I could run around a little bit, so that helped.
Dino, I've got to ask you, after this past weekend's Appalachian State game in Chapel Hill against your former coach, Mack Brown, old Mack, he said he didn't want any more of that Mountaineer magic on his schedule right now. All 3 games in the series since 2019 have really been unique barn burners, all their own. As a Mountaineer, how does that make you feel?
Well, I fully understand where Coach is coming from. I thought it was great when the backup question was, "Well, you don't think this is good for North Carolina?" And Coach said, "Hell yeah, it's good for North Carolina. Let's let North Carolina State and East Carolina schedule." So, I understand. Carolina, they're expected to beat us, but for the App State program, we expect to play with anybody anymore. Any place, anytime, anywhere has been our mantra for a long time. And, we're getting kids up there who can compete. If you beat Appalachian State in your program like Carolina, where they're at right now, you're supposed to do that. But if we beat you and we beat Texas A&M and we beat Michigan, it doesn't look real good on your coaching resume. So I'm sure there's a lot of folks who don't want to play Appalachian State anymore.
One of the things that I remember from my time in Boone was Kid Brewer Stadium and how cold it could get up there really quick, but how bad the turf used to be. It used to be like that Lowe's indoor-outdoor carpet. Then you go to Kansas City, another place where it can be cold as hell out there at times, and you're playing again on that small indoor-outdoor carpet. What are some this is a crazy question, but what kind of burns, what type of injuries did you have from playing on basically green painted concrete?
And that's what I often tell people that they don't realize. At Appalachian, the turf was laid one direction. So if it was a little bit wet, you could cut to the right. But if you cut to the left, you'd end up on your face. Well, that was a good home field advantage as a player. When I got to the NFL, I found out right away there was a lot of places. Arrowhead was terrible. It was green fuzz over concrete. But, the majority of the stadiums we played in were that way. Pittsburgh had a bad surface. The Astrodome back in the day had a bad surface. The Kingdome had a bad surface. There was none of this prescription turf stuff. So it was tough. But, you would come away from games with third-degree burns. You get in the shower, and the trainer would come in with a rag and methylate so you wouldn't get staph infection and squirt it all over your body. And I remember getting a turf burn on my hip. We were playing, I think, at the Kingdome, and come back home, and I get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, and I look down, and my sheet has been following me into the bathroom. It's stuck to a wound that's this size on my hip. I go, this is not going to feel good, getting this off here, go back to bed. But yeah, I've got scars on my elbows and my knees and stuff from that surface. They've certainly come a long way, but I like playing on grass. I had problems with ankle injuries all throughout my career. Big guys cutting your legs out from under you, and it would get hung up on that turf. I never got to play on the turf that they play on today, but I know when we would get a chance to play on grass, it was like man, I get to put 7 studs on again, and you feel like you're back in high school.
It was certainly a lot of fun to make that transition to grass. Jimmy, you and I were just over at Wallace Wade Stadium for that Duke-Clemson game last week, and that field at Wallace Wade, it might as well be at Trayburn or at Pinehurst. I mean, it is some of the most well-manicured, strong Bermuda that there is. They've done an outstanding job with that field, and I tell you, David Cutcliffe deserves a lot of the credit for the way that stadium and that field and that surface and the development of the entire setup at Duke is in this day, because when he got there in 2008, it was bad, very bad. So David Cutcliffe deserves a lot of credit for that. Well, before we let you go, Dino, Jimmy and I like to do this as one of our final questions every week here on Wild Dogs and Hogs on the North Carolina Sports Network. You know, our foundational partner, the folks who make it all go around here, is the North Carolina Port Council. So that's another reason why we like hogs. And both of you guys, look, I'm a transplant Guilford County guy, having gone to school at the football powerhouse known as Guilford. And I really do apologize, Dino, for us not recruiting you to be a Quaker over there in the old District 26. But what you do know, Dino, you've got to be one of the world's experts when it comes to barbecue, matching that High Country, North Carolina, Central North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, and Kansas City all into one. So give us the Dino Hackett guide to barbecue and what's the best and what is not the best. Well, I know what he better say. I can tell you that, being from Greensboro.
Exactly. Coach knows where I'm going with that one, and it is Eastern barbecue to me. You know, I go out to Kansas City. Oh, the barbecue is great. The barbecue is great. I didn't think so much. A lot of tomato-y base, not the vinegar base that we're used to, but Staney's barbecue in Greensboro, North Carolina is pretty darn solid. And of course, there are some places in Lexington that get there too. But yeah, I was not impressed with, but one of the former players out there, Buck Buchanan, had a great place that all the players went to, and of course there were some good spreads out there as well. And love me some barbecue sandwiches.
Are you a hush puppy guy or a French fry guy? Because I find that really says a lot about somebody's personality.
I like the whole thing. Bring me the plate with the hush puppies, the slaw, potato salad, the whole 9 yards. Bring it all on, yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Well, Dino, any last thoughts here? I definitely want to ask you, what are you up to now? Because it seems like you've gone from being a football tycoon to being kind of a construction and development tycoon. I mean, you put up over $30 million a year in terms of real estate development right here at home in North Carolina.
Well, thank you. Guys, I've been super blessed. I came out of the league and kind of spun my tires for a little bit, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, never really thought I'd have a passion for building things, but, you find you have a passion to see something from, going and buying a piece of land, getting it rezoned, and building it from the ground up and seeing it produce for your family, and knowing how many folks that you employ that count on you. I'd just like to say, whether you're in the Yosef Club, the Rams Club, Wolfpack Club, Blue Devil Club, whatever it is, getting that scholarship at Appalachian State changed my life. The things that I've been able to do for my family, by the result of those relationships that I had there and that opportunity that I got there, really changed my life, and wouldn't be the same guy without it. So it's very important that, those folks who, give those monies to athletics and scholarships, that's life-changing, So, the faith, family, football, those are good investments for this country and for our world, and it certainly wouldn't be where I'm at right now had I not had that opportunity.
That's Dino Hackett, Greensboro high school football legend, high country college football legend at Appalachian State, goes on to the NFL where he was racking people left and right for the Kansas City Chiefs. Thank you so much for coming on the North Carolina Sports Network and joining Coach Jim Collins, who I know means a lot to you as well, and myself, as we tell the story of football right here in the Old North State.
Glad to be with you guys. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Dino. Love you, bud.
Yes, sir. Love you too, Coach.
That's Dino Hackett along with Coach Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell, and when we come back here on the North Carolina Sports Network, we'll take a look ahead to another week of college football right here in the Old North State as you're tuned in on the North Carolina Sports Network.
I wasn't born a leader.
It wasn't given to me.
I couldn't buy it.
How'd I get here?
I decided.
I decided.
I decided.
I decided.
Decide to lead as an Army officer.
Wild Dogs and Hogs rolls on here on the North Carolina Sports Network. Is brought to you by the North Carolina Port Council. I'm Mike Waddell, along with the coach, Jim Collins. And, Coach, let's look at this ACC-SEC head-to-head matchup so far here in 2023. And after Texas A&M's loss to Miami on Saturday, the Southeastern Conference, the mighty SEC, is 1-4 against the Atlantic Coast Conference this season. The Aggies fell to the Hurricanes 48-33 in week 2, and it really wasn't even that close, Coach.
Well, the second half of the game, and I was flipping back and forth as I was watching games on Saturday, unfortunately, I hate to admit this, but I think the Hurricanes could be for real this time. Very talented group, very talented offensively. Their quarterback, Van Dyke, threw for 374 and 5 touchdowns. Very efficient offensively against the Texas A&M team that they thought was going to be much improved over a year ago.
Coach, also in the previous segment, we had a chance to talk with former Appalachian State Mountaineer and Kansas City Chief, the one, the only Dino Hackett. And I know he means a lot to you, and you could tell in that interview that Dino got emotional when talking about his time in Boone playing on the mountain for Appalachian State.
Well, he was such a good high school player, and he was a bit undersized, long, tall, but he was so tough. And his brother played at Elon, also was a heck of a good tight end, Jody. So it's a very athletic family, and he came to Boone and excelled and had a great career there, and went on to have an unbelievable career in the NFL, and loves App State now. He loves him some Mountaineers, and is on the mountain every chance that he gets, and so it's just a wonderful, wonderful guy.
So it's always good to get up to the high country. This time of year it's not as hot. Nice little chill in the air at night, and now I'll be able to get some great football talk with Sean Clark and the Mountaineer coaches before they entertain East Carolina coming up this weekend. We're going to go ahead and put that as one of our Excel Moving and Storage Big 4 games of the week. East Carolina and Appalachian State on the ESPN Plus platform at 3:30, and this has as much in the makings of being a bigger rivalry than the East-West barbecue rivalry right here in North Carolina.
That's a great reference to the barbecue now. I love that. That's well done. It does. And I'm going to ask this question, Mike. When was the last time these two played?
It seems like it doesn't happen very often, and that's something I guess that has been a discussion point around the Old North State this week with regards to football scheduling.
Well, a certain coach in the state brought up that he did not want to play a certain team in the state anymore. And don't get me wrong, I'm not being critical of that coach, because that group up on the mountain now has done a tremendous job. Sean Clark deserves a lot of credit. I thought his team last weekend played with great effort, great emotion. They ran the football. They had a quarterback that's making his first start that was extremely well prepared. They will play well this Saturday on top of that mountain, without a doubt. And I think it's a great atmosphere to go play in. And you're right. You said it earlier, and I will slightly disagree with you. I think the East Carolina Pirates do have their back against the wall. They need to win. 0-3 right now would not be good for the people out of Greenville, North Carolina.
And it's also a big recruiting game, because once you go outside of the Big Four, if you're so inclined to want to go to a Big Four school, you might prefer to go to Greenville or to Boone. I know I would probably rather go to Boone than any other place in this state, because it's just a great place to live. Very chill this time of year as well. But when you look at this game, a lot on the line right here between two what we would consider to be ball coaches, Jimmy, and Mike Houston and Sean Clark.
No doubt, they've grown up in the sport and grown up in football and had the opportunity to coach at small colleges and grow their way. Mike Houston started at Lenore-Ryan, and nothing against Lenore-Ryan. You played at Guilford, I played at Elon, went to Elon. I love small college football, but the opportunity to become the head coach at East Carolina after being at James Madison and doing the things that Mike Houston has done. Mike Houston's done a great job, and he'll have his team well prepared. Donnie Kirkpatrick, the offensive coordinator for the Pirates, is a guy that I worked with when I was coaching at App State. He was a graduate assistant for us at App and grew up in the foothills of North Carolina. So it'll be a big game on the mountain now. I can't believe it's on ESPN Plus. I wish it was on a little more of a regional network than that, to be honest with you.
I hear you. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun up there. Can't wait to see the Pirates and the Mountaineers coming up on Saturday from Kidd Brewer Stadium, a.k.a. The Rock, 3,333 feet up into the North Carolina high country. And it'll be a lot of fun to watch that one with our Old North State tailgate as we activate right outside of Kidd Brewer Stadium. Let's go ahead in the Big Four games of the week, brought to you by Excel Moving and Storage. Minnesota and Coach P.J. Fleck rowing down to North Carolina to get on boat with the Tar Heels over at Kenan Stadium. Hopefully it's drier than it was last weekend here in the Triangle, Coach. But this has a lot of the makings of a trap game for North Carolina. The Tar Heels really have to guard against looking past Minnesota. Even though they already have a Big Ten win, it's Minnesota, it's not Michigan.
Well, no doubt. But the P.J. Fleck and the Minnesota team and their staff will be well prepared. They'll come into Chapel Hill, into Kenan Stadium, and they'll play well. It'll be a challenge for the Tar Heels as they come in. I expect Minnesota to row the boat completely and be in the game all the way. I expect it to be a close game, to be honest with you.
Ought to be a lot of fun. That's Minnesota at North Carolina, 3:30 on either ESPN or ESPN2. So that's what it says on the schedule right here. Out in Pasadena, California, it'll be North Carolina Central flying in under head coach Trey Oliver's 2-0 Wings, going up against the Bruins, the University of California at Los Angeles. And Jimmy, have you ever been out to the Rose Bowl? I drove past it once myself. Never been in for a game. I certainly would love to have that experience once upon a time.
You know, that's interesting that you asked that, Mike. And I've been fortunate enough in this career that I've coached in the Orange Bowl and 5 Sugar Bowls. I have not in the Fiesta Bowl. I never had the opportunity to coach in a Rose Bowl, and I wanted the Grand Slam with a Rose Bowl opportunity. Obviously, I'm never going to get that opportunity at this point in time, but what a great opportunity for the players out of North Carolina Central to go to L.A. and go to Pasadena and play against the Bruins there. Jeff Ferris, who was on our staff at Duke, is a tight end coach for the Bruins out there. So it'd be a good matchup, I'm sure.
and will likely be North Carolina Central's final appearance in the sport of football on the Pac-12 network. That's where the game will be broadcast starting at 5 o'clock Eastern time, the Pac-12 network for North Carolina Central Eagle, UCLA Bruin football. And that leads us into our final Big Four game of the week, brought to you by Excel Moving and Storage. And we're talking about Coach Collins' alma mater, the Elon Fighting Phoenix, playing at home in a big CAA game now with cross-triad rival North Carolina A&T. And the Aggies are hurting. 2 games into the season at 0-2, and Elon is fighting right there, and they look pretty strong again this year, Coach.
Well, I think the Elon, and I almost called them the Fighting Christians, the Phoenix. Tony Trisciani has done a great job there in building that program. Unfortunately, they are 0-2 with a loss to Wake Forest on the opening weekend, and then a big loss to Gardner Webb at Gardner Webb. And that's someone we haven't talked about is the Gardner Webb Bulldogs with Trey Lamb, and what a good job he's done there. But a critical game for both the Aggies and the Phoenix this weekend at Elon. So Go Phoenix now. Got to pull for the Phoenix in this one now, and I think they will play well.
That's your tour around our Excel Moving and Storage Big Four games of the week. Coach, what's your big pick for an upset? Is any game shouting out upset to you as you sit on your porch there in Porter's Neck?
You know what, Mike? I don't see a big upset this week. I think the favorites will all win, but as you look at NC State and VMI, obviously that would be a challenge, and it would be an unbelievable situation. I think the one that could come closest maybe is Wake at Old Dominion. I don't see the Blue Devils struggling with Northwestern, and I think in the end the Tar Heels will prevail over Minnesota in Kenan Stadium. So no, I think the closest one could possibly be Wake at Old Dominion.
I'm going to go for the Aggies of North Carolina A&T going to Burlington and taking out your Elon Fighting Phoenix.
Did you really go there?
I did. I went there. I
tell you, next week after the Phoenix win, our guest needs to be Tony Trisciani. And I'll let you tell him that you picked against him this week. Okay.
Hey, I just tell you, I really had a great time at the Aggie Eagle Classic this past weekend in Greensboro, North Carolina A&T, falling in that game to North Carolina Central. But the Eagles, they're a pretty special ball club, and I really like the intensity and the passion of this Aggies football team. So their back's up against the wall. Sometimes when your back is up against the wall, that's the most dangerous dog, is one that's injured.
Well, no doubt. And again, we spoke about this earlier. Both teams are in a critical situation to win. You don't want to open 0-3. No. Especially with the entire conference schedule in front of you. And the CAA is a good conference now. There's a lot of good football teams to be played in the competition in that league with Villanova and New Hampshire and Delaware. There's some challenges down the road. So you need to win early and build up some momentum as you move through the season. So critical game.
Coach, that's about it for this week. What you got planned for the weekend? Where are you going to be watching the games?
Mike, I will be in Wilmington and Porter's Neck this weekend before making a quick trip down to St. Simon's Island, Georgia, here in a couple weeks. So we'll be in front of the television on Emerald Dunes Road, ready to watch.
Should be a lot of fun. For Coach Jim Collins, I'm Mike Waddell. Thanks for tuning in this week to the North Carolina Sports Network and Wild Dogs and Hogs.